Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here in the Weather Center for more tornado warning coverage as a new tornado warning has just been issued for parts of Alachua, Bradford, and Union counties until 6:30 this morning. At 6:02, the National Weather Service is tracking a possible tornado just northwest of Gainesville Airport or near Gainesville, moving off toward the northwest at about 35 miles an hour. Again, as we were talking about earlier, these would be weak tornadoes. The circulation here and the areas of rotation that are trying to show up are pretty broad in nature, but the Weather Service airing on the side of caution here. You can kind of see something evolve for one frame here, and then right after that they pulled the trigger, but then when they pulled the trigger it started to weaken on down here, but we're pretty far from the radar. Maybe a little something still trying to show up as we get here closer toward it looks like a State Highway 121 to the north of Paradise right now, but it's broad in nature. Maybe another circulation here trying to pop on up as we're getting closer toward it looks like State Road 222. So going to be watching out here northeast 52nd Drive. So some areas of broad weak rotation. These would be really weak tornadoes on that EF0 type level if we did have something touch down, meaning there's winds there under about 85 miles an hour, give or take. We'll be continuing to track everything, of course, with that. So just watching things carefully here in the Weather Center, trying to get things pulled up, in fact. And I'll go over to our enhanced Fujita scale to let you know what I'm talking about here. In fact, I do have that in our system. So let me go ahead and pop that on now. We're not talking about in this situation. Now, some situations you can have a stronger tornado, but in this situation, we're talking about light damage probably from a circulation like what we're seeing now. Later on, could have a different situation. We'll let you know, of course. But right now, we're talking about a tornado still, though. That was 65 to 85 mile an hour winds. It still wouldn't be pleasant. Still can cause minor injuries, or if a wrong situation happened, it could cause something more significant to happen. So I just have to bear that in mind. But that's why we have the warnings in play, and that's why I need to take shelter, because you just can't kind of take things for granted here, even though the circulation isn't all that tight on the Doppler radar. So let me go ahead and zoom back on in here. We have a little circulation here as we're getting over again to State Road 121. Looking at some of the different volume scans here this morning, going between some of those to be able to kind of get an idea. It looks a little bit stronger higher up in toward the atmosphere. So again, a tornado warning in play until 6:30 this morning, getting you inside, away from those windows. Most of you already inside, of course, but I just want to go ahead and get away from windows. If you're just waking up this morning, your phone going off in Brooker, we're watching you guys, watching a possible tornado. Probably going to head toward areas not quite as far east as Brooker, but you're under the warning. Sometimes these tropical tornadoes have a mind of their own a little bit, or we have other areas of rotation kind of evolve. So you're under the warning. You got to take shelter. Just kind of respecting the polygon here. It is what is really said in the weather world, but things are broad in nature right now. I've seen much more significant areas of rotation before within the Doppler radar, so nothing to really stress out about. Nothing to really stress out about right now. But we're going to get you through it. The tornado watch did just get expanded northward, ironically, just into toward Alachua, but not into toward Bradford and Union yet. But we have an active warning now, meaning conditions favorable for some tornado conditions. As we look at some of those winds real quick near the coast, you do see some of those trying to kick on up. But here's our other source. You do see what's going on there with that area of spin. We're keeping an eye on that. Watching the heavy downpours as well. And now here's the tornado watch. You do see here in the yellow that goes now just until 8. It was just a local extension, but they did add a Gilchrist, Alachua, and Putnam. Now the actual warning, though, is for parts of Bradford, Union, and Alachua. So that's the red box. That means it's an imminent threat. The yellow means a watchful eye needs to be kept to the situation. But an imminent threat here, as we're looking north of Gainesville at a rotation tracker, we're seeing a little bit of something on here. I know earlier we were having trouble picking some of this out, but we did get a little bit of something popping on up here on a rotation tracker. So a little bit of tighter rotation there as we were looking near Gainesville Airport. Haven't seen anything out of the Gainesville Airport area yet, but watching things very carefully. In fact, did just get a report of a gust of 26 there, so nothing too impressive, which is great news. But I do have another look here. I've been working on this morning. We're going to be in front of the camera here in a little bit. Once we kind of catch another break, we have almost everything ready to go now to go ahead and start our long-form coverage in just a little bit here. But we do have this tornado warning we need to cover right now. So here's our look at the track. Our center did about an hour ago off of Hernando, probably getting closer to being off of Citrus County here at this point with our storm. kind of watching things. You can kind of see that center there, some of those stronger winds going to be approaching the coast here near Cedar Key. So just be mindful of that. Starting to move on in fact. So we're going to be watching here carefully as we're looking towards Cedar Key with this storm system and then these winds here. They haven't been all that strong lately, as we've seen here. 38 miles an hour, St. Petersburg, 27 Brooksville. Some of these gusts, we had 26 in Gainesville with the tornado warning storm. We were just referencing that, so something to be mindful of for sure. Just kind of keeping an eye out for what can happen. Weather Service just mentioned in the tornado warning storm that updraft has weakened some. That's some good news, obviously. It's north of Gainesville, east of 75, moving northwest towards the cross. So just giving you some inside baseball there, according to what the Weather Service is saying. Again, a tornado warning continues till 6:30, another 16 minutes or so. There's our area that the Weather Service is watching, looking for any tornado debris in here. We're not really seeing anything. You see a little lowering of something, but I don't think that's debris. We kind of saw that earlier. You'll get that from time to time. We're further from the radar. We're close enough to the radar here. We'd probably actually get a more well-defined signature, I would suspect. Just going between some different modes here. Here of our radar, we're getting updates. The warning does still continue. Just looking at some different products that we have here. The latest update from the Weather Service. Vigorous shower, and don't want to hear that terminology. It's capable of producing a tornado located 7 miles east of Alachua, or 8 miles southeast of Worthington Springs, moving northwest at 35 miles an hour. So you want to go ahead and take shelter. If you're in this red polygon, a possible tornado right there as we get toward, it looks like State Road 121 there, as we're looking not far from La Crosse. So this is headed in the general direction of Santa Fe, maybe. Again, these kind of turn sometimes on you, so you have to be kind of mindful. Maybe even a little bit further west than that. We'll have to wait and see. But you kind of see Brooker, some of that area being cleared from the update there, as we're watching a little bit more of a westerly trajectory with this. So again, tracking the latest information from the Weather Service here this morning. A tornado warning in play until 6:30 for parts of Alachua, Bradford, and Union. I know I'm in Bradford County, watching things carefully, of course. Not where we're at in Starke, though. We're not having to deal with that threat here, luckily, at this moment. So that's some good news. Not seeing that sun come on up too much yet, so I'm not going to really see the sun today, but not really seeing anything on our camera right now, so we'll wait on going to that. But we'll have vantage points here on that as we're looking ahead in toward the timelines. It's something to kind of bear in mind here as we are watching things very carefully, of course. Again, getting some new information in the chat. Downstate, we're getting some area flood warnings to pop up, for instance, towards Charlotte, DeSoto, Hardy. We already have a flood warning in our area. Here as we're looking toward parts of Taylor County, as well as Lafayette and Dixie, because of an increased flood potential there. Watching out for that, of course. So, going to keep our eyes on this tornado warning until 6:30. Keeping our eyes on this situation. Just checking the chat. We're kind of sticking with this one a little longer because of just part of Bradford being in it. You guys just waking up here. Maybe a little bit more impressive than what we were seeing as we're looking later on in the tornado warnings, except for at the beginning there in that 4 o'clock hour. Most of that accent wasn't all that impressive. There is at least some type of spin here that can be noted within the Doppler radar, but there's not much there overall. So that's the good news. We're watching things carefully, though. Going between some different modes. I do have some graphics updated, so let me go ahead and go over to these. We're going to go over these here again a little bit later on, but since we're on now, let's just go ahead and give you an update on the storm itself. Talking about Tropical Storm Elsa. If you're just waking up here, not a hurricane anymore, and that's the good news, but there still is a hurricane, a warning in play here for parts of areas of Dixie, Levy, and Citrus counties. 2 of those 3 in our viewing circle, not Citrus, but Dixie and Levy are. We're talking about a storm with max sustained winds at 65 miles an hour. As of the latest update, the pressure up, indicating a weaker storm. And you see at 2 o'clock this afternoon, we're anticipating a storm with 60-mile-an-hour sustained winds as we're looking maybe a little further off toward the west. I'll try to break that down for you here in just a moment. It seems like we've had a little western adjustment, meaning landfall could be a little later, and that means impact could be just a little bit more here as we're getting a little bit further out toward areas like Suwannee County, for instance, versus Columbia County at this point. So we'll just have to wait and see, though. A tropical storm versus a hurricane also means sometimes those impacts are spread a little bit further, and there's a little more friction involved sometimes with spins of areas of rotation for tornadic weather. So I have to watch for that. Maybe some trending of the rain, not as organized. We were looking last night at maybe a situation more like Hermine, but now maybe not quite like that. Maybe in some ways it will be, but a little more of a disorganization here can lead to some different things happening versus what we saw back then off toward the west there with Hermine in 2016. But watching things, looking at those impacts here as we switch on over toward the worst. I have 6 p.m. right now. I was just working on maybe adjusting that here, looking at some of the latest model data, why we ended up getting that tornado warning. So might end up changing that a little bit, adding that a little bit to a longer time frame here. But the worst now through 6 p.m. I might end up peaking around 2. Looking at some of the latest model high-res data, we're trying to tweak that here in the Weather Center for you. Storm surge information you do see here as we're looking at this now. East erosion, dangerous rip currents, ice surfs, and flooding, and that storm surge warning still continuing from Bonito Beach to the Osceola River. And now 3 to 5 feet of storm surge. We're talking in an area here as we get between, it looks like the Osceola River there and Inglewood. So gotta watch out for that. Haven't seen a lot of numbers really add on up yet, but that's because of the wind direction. We're gonna be watching that here as we look ahead into the timeline. We've kind of been breaking that down for you. And then with the tropical storm just started the devices, and this kind of tells the story a little bit better with that wind impact a little bit further off toward the west now, a little bit closer in toward the Big Bend, it looks like, and up towards Swanee, and maybe even getting over toward Madison County even there. So that's something to watch out for. As we're getting an update on the tornado warning, Union, the little chunk of Union's been dropped, but it still continues for parts of Alachua and Bradford. Pretty weak rotation there, located now near Worthington Spring, according to the weather service in Jacksonville, moving northwest at 35. Looking at the peak wind gust here, we're keeping these the same for now. Still that potential. We've been getting some higher gusts towards Cedar Key already at the weather stem station there. And in fact, just checking that out, I expect those numbers to kind of go up some more here even as the worst of the weather is starting to move on in. And a gust of 45, it looks like recently reported in the last 10 minutes. So just kind of updating some of that though. So just seeing anything new. It doesn't look like anything new at this point, so that's good. But let's pop on over toward our Cedar Key Fire and Rescue weather stem camera here. We'll get that loaded on up for you. You do see here the storminess this morning. Pretty nasty morning there in towards Cedar Key. Watching things very carefully in that area. We're monitoring the situation very carefully, of course, there toward parts of Levy County. Going to get some of the worst that our storm system has to offer. Winds right now 38 miles an hour with gusts of 45, make it 39, 42 miles an hour now. So you kind of get the idea. Those numbers pretty high relatively at the coast. Going to have some power outage issues, no doubt there. More than likely, you're going to be seeing those threats here spread inland as well. Checking some of the latest numbers now. 9,036 customers in the state out. That's not too many, but as we see the storm kind of get closer, spread inland, some of those impacts that we see in those numbers increase a little bit more here as we do go out in the timeline. Looking at Alachua County, 464 customers in the dark. And in fact, let's go ahead move away from weather stem right now. We'll move away from weather stem for the time being and kind of pop you over to some of our other sources. We have so many different things we can go to. Let's go over to power outage map now. You do see what's happening with this. You see Alachua 464, 155 customers, Marion, just 52 in Levy right now, so that's good. 27 in Dixie County, but these numbers are going to go up, no doubt. So keeping an eye on this here. I'm going to go back to the tornado warning. We just got a good update in. It looks like they're not going to extend this tornado warning, so that's the good news here. That is the very good news at this hour. Not planning on an extension. There is broad rotation here as we get down. It looks like near State Highway 235 in here. This is in northwestern Alachua County versus being really in Bradford County. So that's the good news. That is the good news here. More of a lacrosse situation here at this point. But there's a little bit of weak rotation. Not something that would produce anything maybe over an EF0, but it could produce a tornado down to the surface. And that's well we're aware that can cause issues, especially if you're in a mobile home here. A tornado warning in play until 6:30 this morning. watching a weak area of rotation. Going to keep watching some other areas as they evolve as well down toward the south. You can see here, monitoring things very carefully. Just trying to give you an idea of what is going on here. You see some really weak areas overall. Nothing too tight, but we're keeping an eye on it here in the weather center. The tornado circulation has broadened on out, but still a little chunk of Bradford into the warning. But we're watching more here in Alachua County right now with that circulation. So if you're in Brooker, by the way, you guys have been trimmed out of the warning. You guys can go ahead and come out of your tornado safe area. If you were in there, you're out of the warning. They just updated it, trimmed out Brooker here. We're watching more off toward the west at this point, though, with this circulation. Again, your State Highway 235. So if you're still in this little red box here, go ahead and keep heed in those warnings that are in play for about another 5 or 6 minutes. We're going to go ahead and zoom back on out here, watching things carefully in toward parts of Alachua County. You're going to look at a GDR here, upscale growth. We do have a little bit in that area. We'll watch to see if there's other areas of spin that try to evolve. Right now, this is the one area, and we're not just seeing much in the way of gate to gate at all. So that's the good news here. 30 and maybe, that's about it, honestly. We're not really getting much in the opposite direction, maybe about 2 miles an hour. So that might give you, I guess, up to about 60 mile an hour of wind down to the surface here, going on the higher side. But generally, just not enough to issue a tornado warning in a normal situation. But we do have the tornado warning in play right now. We're watching it for you very carefully, obviously, here this morning. You just never know what can happen in a tropical setup. On my other software, we're seeing about 13 miles an hour one way and 20 the other way. So that gets you about 33 miles. Let's see here. Yeah, 33 miles an hour worth of rotation, maybe 35 miles an hour as I see a 22 mile an hour pixel. So it would be a weak tornado if we had one here in this area. Not too concerned. Even though there's a tornado warning, you got to take those seriously, as we always talk. But just not seeing a lot here right now. So that's the good news. If we don't get an extension, we'll go off right after 6:30. But tornado warning still including a very small part of Bradford. Going to be watching more of this action come up from the south here, causing conditions to deteriorate with this storm. We're watching things carefully here in the weather center, obviously. We're going to see if other spins try to evolve here, try to emerge in this setup. Right now, still a tornado warning for about another 4 minutes or so, 4 parts. Mainly Alachua County. Watching the spin here as it gets closer away maybe from La Crosse in the next few minutes. Still right at La Crosse right now. County Road 237 there. We're also talking about, it looks like Northwest 202nd Avenue with this spin. But we're going to be tracking this further up here. Tracking the situation, keeping you updated on what's happening with our tropical storm. Not a hurricane at this point, but a tropical storm Elsa. So again, a tornado warning continues for another 4 minutes or so. You see all this moisture down to the south here. Watching that all come on in. I'm talking about the winds haven't been all that impressive here. And that's good news, obviously. That's good news. We're keeping our eyes on things. You see here our track maybe a little further off toward the west, but these winds will start to pick up, and we do have higher winds towards Cedar Key, despite not necessarily seeing that. We don't have that in our system, but you see our storm off the Tampa radar. As it does move on up, they're starting to get into some stronger winds as they pull on velocity there. Cedar Key area may end up getting pretty strong winds, but even up toward maybe Suwannee there in Dixie County, the community of Suwannee, getting some stronger winds even as they'll be moving in here over the next little bit. Watching things again with this scenario as it does continue to evolve in toward the region. Let's go ahead and pop back the other viewpoint now. You do see here around Starke, not too much rain yet, but we're seeing some more rain coming from the south. We're keeping an eye on things for sure. Another 3 minutes on the tornado warning. Just checking my rain gauge here. We've only seen about 1/10 of an inch or so far today. But again, the conditions will start to get worse here as we're looking ahead in toward the timeline. So be mindful of that here. We'll be watching, not much in the way of rotation at all as we're looking at the latest scan. You don't see much of anything there, so that's good news. See a little something broad in Columbia County, but well, since we're watching things that are so broad in nature, I will point it out, but not much there around County Road 18, but we'll see if there's any type of tornado warning required there soon. We'll go ahead and zoom back down to the south now, watching more of this moisture come on in. Come on into the viewing area. This storm system, of course, is one to watch. The Storm Prediction Center talking about a risk for brief tornadoes continuing, and looks like the center, as it sifts northward, areas north and northwest of the current watch will be monitored for any increase in tornado potential. So, may get another tornado watch. I would be surprised if we didn't get another tornado watch or two as we're looking up toward North Florida, just because conditions to become more favorable. Just checking the chat right now here in the Weather Center. I'll go ahead and go back on over towards some of our different tools we have in the toolkit as we watch this storm. We're watching things carefully. Of course, this tornado warning continuing for another few minutes. Let's check satellite right now and give you that visual over a tropical storm. And you see a blow of accent a little bit closer to the center, so it could be problematic here as we're seeing a little more organization now again. So that's why they kept a hurricane warning. The National Hurricane Center for parts of Dixie, Levy, and also into Citrus counties, just in case something emerges here. We'll be watching it. We'll be keeping our eyes on things, of course, as we look at some of our meso overlays still. As we look here at the radar as well, you see things matching up pretty good as the overlays behind a bit. So, gotta watch out. Looks like the tornado warning has just gone off the board. They weren't planning on extending that. So that's the good news, of course, with that popping away for now. So we're going to check radar one more time here. Make sure we don't get any type of new warning to be issued. You see a little bit of rotation there east of Fort White. I'm going to check another radar I have behind the scenes just to make sure we're not seeing something pop up from that vantage point real quick. And there's a little something there, so we have to watch that because the way they've been issuing these warnings here in this environment, we could get another warning here. So let me go and give this heads up before we wrap it up. If we don't get another warning next minute or two, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for now because we're looking higher up in the storm. But we are seeing something here on our other source in terms of maybe some rotation trying to evolve here east of Fort White. So this is a heads up, an early heads up if we get a tornado warning toward parts of Columbia County. It might be having something kind of move on in here as we're looking west to Interstate 75. So going to be watching that area there as we're looking off the Moody radar. We'll switch back over to Jacksonville. It's pretty broad, but there is something there considering how we've been seeing these tornado warnings this year today. You just never know. That's about 5,000 feet up into toward the atmosphere. This look here is also about 5,000 feet, and both of them are showing some rotation. So this is just something to be watchful about here in Columbia County. Just be vigilant here. In southern Columbia County, might be trying to get something to tighten up on us here. I think we'll keep it on for this radar scan. Still might get a warning after that, and then we'll jump on, of course. But just want to make sure we don't get something to pop real quick, as this has ramped up a little, seeing a little bit of that whiteness, I guess you could say, as we're looking here into toward this area, meaning we're getting winds to try to go in opposite directions some as we're going here in our west. Looks like a West Little Beaver Road in here in southern Columbia, so we'll watch for that. We're keeping our eyes on this situation, waiting for the next scan here of the Doppler. I'm sure the Weather Service is keeping an eye on this, just like I am, to see if they need to issue a new tornado warning for this area off toward the west in southern Columbia County. One thing I'm noticing here as I kind of look at things, this is from 629 on the scan, and then as we go over, it's co-located some, but that's the latest update now. Latest update, it looks like as we get here toward the region on the actual reflectivity, so the velocity should match up soon, should kind of go to the north. You see that, maybe not quite as well together, but we are getting some breaking news out of Cedar Key. The Weather Service Tallahassee warning about the winds picking up in Levy County, moving toward Dixie County, as we did just on that site there at Cedar Key Fire and Rescue, get a gust to about 52 miles an hour. So that's our highest gust in the area so far today. It looks like some stronger winds maybe coming on in even over the next little bit. So this is from Cedar Key now. Conditions really deteriorating now in Levy County, a gust of 52 miles an hour there with our stronger tropical storm. So we'll be covering all of that for you here as we look ahead in the timeline over the next little bit. I see they've gone with a significant weather advisory for a broad area now to 7:30 for weak areas of rotation as we're watching here seeing something, by the way, maybe above a little bit more toward northwest Alachua again, but we're watching weak areas of rotation here in general over a wide area from Bradford, Marion, Alachua, Gilchrist, Columbia, Suwanee, Union, Putnam. You kind of get the idea here. There is naming all these different counties with this rotational thread. So we watch them, we track them, and back around 7 a.m. with the coverage here. Unless we get a tornado warning issue sooner than that, we have to jump on immediately to keep you, your friends, and your family safe. Thanks so much for tuning in for now.